Uninjured in there. Here.
Three people.
Three people uninjured?
Yeah, my two daughters, and I cannot believe I did this.
Aisha Mason.
911, Shaker Police, emergency.
Yes, my husband just beat me and threw me out the car. He has my two daughters in the car.
Listen to this 911 call from November 17, 2018. The woman's voice is shaking so hard she can barely speak. He stabbed her, she's dead. Can you hear that in the background? Those are children crying. They just watched their father kill their mother. Now, I need you to picture Shaker Heights, Ohio. Beautiful tree-lined streets where families feel safe. The kind of neighborhood where moms walk their dogs at night and kids ride bikes until dark. Nothing like this ever happens here. But it did happen. And the worst part? Everyone should have seen it coming. You see, there was this man named Lance Mason. For years, he sat in a courtroom wearing those black robes, making decisions about other people's lives. When someone got hurt by their partner, Lance decided what happened next. He was supposed to be the good guy protecting victims. The thing is, Lance was beating his own wife. Her name was Aisha Fraser, and she was everything you'd want in a teacher. Patient with difficult kids. Always staying late to help students who were struggling. Her two daughters were her whole world. In 2014, Lance snapped. He attacked Aisha right there in their car while their little girls sat in the back seat watching. He broke the bones around her eye. Can you imagine? These babies watching their dad hurt their mom like that. Lance went to prison, but here's what's crazy, only for 9 months. 9 months for nearly killing the mother of his children. And when he got out, the city gave him a job. Like nothing happened. Aisha tried to move on. She thought the nightmare was over. She had to believe her girls would be safe when they visited their father. But on that Saturday morning in November, when she pulled up to drop off the kids like she'd done so many times before, Lance was waiting for her. What happened next was so brutal that grown police officers cried at the scene. He stabbed her over and over while those little girls screamed for someone to help their mommy. A sister inside the house heard Aisha's screams and called 911, but it was already too late. When Lance tried to drive away in Aisha's car, he crashed into a police cruiser and ran. They caught him, but the damage was done. Aisha Fraser, this beautiful, loving teacher and mother, was gone forever. Here's what keeps me up at night about this case. Aisha did everything right. She left. She reported him. She trusted the system to protect her and her children. But the system failed her in the worst way possible. And now 2 little girls have to grow up without their mother because nobody wanted to admit that a judge could be a monster. Before we enter into tonight's story, I need you to do something for me. Look at your phone. See that little red subscribe button? Here's the thing. The algorithm only shows these stories to people who engage. And every case I cover, every victim I fight for, every family I give a voice to, it all depends on you hitting that button. Because the dead can't speak for themselves. But we can speak for them. So subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Because what you're about to hear will change how you see love, and will make you question why a judge would beat his wife to death.
And family. She was an amazing mother, a beloved teacher in Shaker Heights, and an active member of Garfield Memorial Church.
Aisha Fraser was like sunshine in her school and her city. Every day, she walked into her classroom at Woodbury Elementary with a bright smile that warmed her students and colleagues alike. She taught 6th grade, math and social studies, but she gave so much more than lessons. She was a part of something bigger too, Delta Sigma Theta, a sorority of women dedicated to serving others. They called her SOR, a sister in service and community, and said her loss felt personal to every member. Aisha's life was full of love. She cared deeply for her 2 daughters, Audrey, 11, and Ava, 8. She cared for her students. She cared for her friends, her family, and her neighborhood. Everyone who knew her says she never spoke badly about someone else. She always looked for the good and she shared it. She made sure that all of her students felt heard, one former student said. If I was ever having a bad day, she would let me come eat lunch in her room. Kendall Marbury, one of the former students, said this. Aisha stayed late after school to help struggling students. She volunteered during school events. She replied with jokes and kind words at the end of every week, teaching her students about balance and joy, even when things were stressful. When she isn't teaching, you could find her dancing. She used to be a modern dancer, filling school assemblies with her energy. She cheered on the Cleveland Cavaliers on game nights. She traveled to reunite with her sorority sisters. She wore her roles, teacher, mother, friend, and soror, as if they were different colors on the same bright canvas. Her school felt the loss deeply. Woodbury Elementary set up grief counselors, and the Teachers Association started a GoFundMe to help her daughters. Hundreds gathered for a candlelight vigil on the school grounds, holding candles and quiet prayers under the trees. Aisha's circle of care and warmth stretched far beyond her 6th grade class. She was a light in Shaker Heights, not just a teacher, but a friend, a mentor, and a mother who fought for her students and her children every single day. Once upon a time, Aisha Fraser believed in the man she married. Lance Mason stood tall in the public eye, well-spoken, educated, admired. He served as a state senator and later became a judge. To everyone outside their home, he was a symbol of success and leadership. But Aisha knew a different side. Behind the polished suits and courtroom titles lived a man who controlled, who erupted, who destroyed. Their life had once looked perfect, family photos with soft smiles, birthday cakes lit with laughter, holiday mornings with matching pajamas. The kind of scenes people post online. The kind that hide what's truly happening behind closed doors. In 2014, the mask came off. The family was driving back from a funeral. The girls sat in the back seat. What started as a conversation quickly turned into rage. Lance punched Aisha in the face over and over. He slammed her head against the car window, then against the dashboard. He bit her on the cheek and choked her. Their daughters screamed. They cried. But they could not stop it. Lance finally pulled over. Aisha, bloodied and broken, somehow climbed out. Her face was swollen. Her eye socket shattered. She ran down the road, barefoot, pleading for help. A passing car stopped. A kind stranger let her in. From inside, Aisha called 911. Her voice shook. Her fear was raw. Her first words weren't even about herself. Please, find my kids. She feared Lance might hurt them next. The police found her daughters, still in the car, wide-eyed and trembling. They had seen everything. That night changed their world forever. Aisha pressed charges. Lance was arrested. The community was shocked. A judge, a man of the law, had committed such cruelty? Lance Mason was sentenced to prison for the assault. But it wasn't long. He served just 9 months. Less than a year for breaking the bones and spirit of the woman he once vowed to protect. Even after all that, the system gave him another chance. He kept his connections. He was hired by the city again, working in a new public role. And Aisha, like so many survivors, was forced to live in fear. She never stopped being a mother. Never stopped showing up for her students. But something in her eyes had changed. Every custody exchange felt like walking into a storm. Every weekend handoff came with held breath. Aisha had told friends if something happened to her, it would be him. And in the back seats of that car, 2 little girls carried a memory they could never erase. A mother bleeding. A father shouting. A childhood cracked open by violence. The world had clapped for Lance Mason. But inside the silence of his home, he became a name that made his own daughters afraid.
From this day forward, their lives will never be the same. Right before Thanksgiving.
2 people uninjured in there. Here.
3 people.
3 people uninjured?
Yeah, my 2 daughters, and I cannot believe I did this.
When Aisha brought charges against Lance Mason after the 2014 assault, she believed justice would protect her. Lance, once a powerful judge, pleaded guilty to attempted felonious assault and domestic violence. He received a 2-year sentence, but was released after serving just 9 months. Just months after his release, he returned to public life. The city of Cleveland, under Mayor Frank Jackson, hired him as a director in the mayor's minority business office. Many in the community were outraged. How could a man convicted of beating his wife and nearly killing her be welcomed back into government? Critics spoke out sharply. Activists and journalists called the decision an astounding snub and disgusting, saying it sent a dangerous message that status and connections could shield someone from consequences. Even Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, a longtime friend of Lance's, had written a letter seeking mercy during his sentencing in 2015. She described him as a good man who made a very bad mistake. When he was later accused of murder, she publicly condemned his actions, acknowledging that the crimes were horrific. Despite these warnings, Lance continued in his public role until Aisha was murdered. Only then was he fired, and only after the horror became public. It was a Saturday morning. Aisha Fraser pulled her car into the driveway on Chagrin Boulevard. She had done this many times before, dropped off her daughters for a court-ordered custody exchange. But every time felt heavy. Every time, she braced herself. Inside the house, Lance Mason was waiting. Aisha stepped out. She opened the back seat. Her daughters were with her. As she bent down to help them, Lance burst through the front door. He didn't yell. He didn't pause. He didn't argue. He charged. With a kitchen knife in hand, he ran toward Aisha and plunged the blade into her. Twice. Then over and over. He stabbed her 59 times. Her daughters screamed. They were watching. Too young to understand, too old to forget. Inside the house, Lance's sister Lynn heard the chaos and rushed to the window. She froze. Then she grabbed the phone and called 911. Her voice trembled as she told the dispatcher, "He stabbed her, he said she's dead." Aisha's body collapsed onto the cold driveway. Blood pooled beside her car. Her daughters ran inside the house, shaking, crying, asking for their mother. Then Lance climbed into Aisha's Audi and hit the gas. Down the street, Officer Adam Flint was arriving. He had no warning. No time to react. Lance rammed the Audi straight into the police cruiser. The crash was brutal. The officer's legs and ribs shattered. The car spun out. Lance jumped out and tried to run. Police swarmed the scene. Sirens echoed. Officers shouted for him to get on the ground. He didn't listen. "Put your hands up," one yelled. Lance stood in the street. Blood dripped from his hands. His shirt was soaked. Finally, he stopped running. He was handcuffed, bleeding from his wrists. Police pushed him to the ground. One officer asked who was in the house. Lance whispered, "His daughters and his sister." Inside, the children were unharmed, physically. But nothing about them would ever be the same. Officers rushed Aisha's body. She wasn't breathing. Her wounds were deep, relentless, angry. She had never stood a chance. The scene was chaos, twisted cars, a bleeding officer, crying children, and a woman who had done everything right, but still didn't make it home. Lance Mason had made a decision that morning. To wait. To attack. To kill. It wasn't sudden rage. It was a plan. And he did it in front of the children he once promised to protect. News of Aisha Fraser's murder spread fast. By nightfall, her name was everywhere, on the lips of neighbors, in classrooms, on the front pages of Cleveland's papers. But at Woodbury Elementary, where she had taught for 16 years, the silence said more than any headline. Her desk sat untouched. Her classroom door stayed closed. Children peeked inside, hoping maybe she'd walk in with her usual smile. But she didn't. The school district canceled classes. Not just for the students, but for the teachers too. They needed time to breathe, to cry, to try to understand how someone so full of life could be taken in such a brutal way. Outside the school, a small bench became something more. People brought flowers. Handwritten notes. Teddy bears. A sign with Aisha's photo read, "You were love in human form." Another one whispered, "We're so sorry we couldn't save you." At the vigil that followed, hundreds gathered under a gray sky. Students, parents, teachers, past graduates. Some held candles. Some held one another. Some couldn't stop crying. One mother stood beside her child and whispered, "That could have been me." Another said aloud, "Oh my God, the system failed her." A former student, now in high school, read a letter. "Miss Fraser believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I'm standing here today because of her." A teacher clutched the microphone with shaking hands. She was a blessing, and the judge who hurt her should never have been let out. The community mourned, but underneath the grief was fury fury at the system that had freed a man proven dangerous. A man who had already broken her bones once. A man who was trusted again. Cleveland wept. Shaker Heights stood still. But Aisha Fraser's name was no longer just a teacher's name. It became a symbol, a reminder, a warning, and a promise that what happened to her must never happen again.
Uninjured in there. Here.
3 people.
3 people uninjured?
Yeah, my 2 daughters, and I cannot believe it.
From this day forward, their lives will never be the same right before Thanksgiving.
No remorse other than the fact that you ruined your own career. What a monster you are. Back our daughter. This is our life sentence, and nothing can ever change that outcome.
The courtroom was quiet, but the air was heavy. Family, friends, and former colleagues of Aisha Fraser filled the benches. Some clutched tissues. Others stared straight ahead, still trying to understand how they ended up in this room, waiting to hear what would happen to the man who had taken so much from them. Lance Mason walked in wearing a jail-issued suit. His hands were cuffed. His head hung low. He stood before the judge and spoke. He didn't fight the charges. He didn't ask for a trial. He said he didn't want his daughters to take the stand. He said they had already seen too much. He pleaded guilty to every count. Aggravated murder. Felonious assault. Grand theft. Violating a protection order. Using Aisha's car to ram a police officer. Every violent, calculated act from that day was laid bare. Then came the sentencing. The prosecution asked for the maximum. Life in prison without parole. They called what happened barbaric. They said no child should ever have to witness what those girls saw. Millicent Fraser, Aisha's mother, rose to speak. Her voice cracked, but her words cut through the room. "You offered our daughter no mercy," she said, looking at Lance. "And so we offer you none." She asked the court to lock him away forever. So did Aisha's friends. So did her godmother. So did the woman who promised Aisha she would raise her girls if anything ever happened. The judge listened. He looked at the facts. He considered the pain in the room. Then, finally, he made his decision. Lance Mason was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after 35 years. He would be 87 years old before he could even ask for release. Some cried. Some nodded. Some left without saying a word. It wasn't the full justice they hoped for. But it was a start. A door closing. A chapter ending. For many, it still wasn't enough. Because Aisha Fraser was gone. And no sentence, no number, could bring her back. In the months that followed Aisha Fraser's death, her name echoed not just through schools and neighborhoods, but through the halls of Ohio's State House. Lawmakers stood before cameras. Some in black. Some holding her photo. Their voices shook, not from uncertainty, but from resolve. Representative Janine Boyd stepped forward first. She had grown up in Shaker Heights. She knew the kind of woman Aisha was: dedicated, strong, beloved. And she knew the kind of system that had failed her. "We cannot bring Aisha back," she said, "but we can make sure no other woman ends like she did." With that, she introduced Aisha's Law. The bill wasn't just a tribute. It was a blueprint for change. It demanded that police officers be trained to recognize high-risk domestic violence situations. It required 24/7 availability of judges so that victims could get immediate protection orders, day or night. It called for risk screenings that flagged dangerous abusers early. And it made strangulation a felony on its own, recognizing it as a major warning sign for lethal violence. Other lawmakers, including Republican Representative Sarah Carruthers, stood beside her. This wasn't about politics. It was about lives. Together, they pushed the bill forward. Inside police departments, officers began learning to ask deeper questions. They used new tools to assess danger, not just bruises but patterns. Not just threats but silence. The goal was clear: catch the warning signs before another Aisha. In 2022, after years of debate, Aisha's Law passed in Ohio, at least in part. It wasn't everything the advocates hoped for, but it was something. A step forward. And across the state, women began whispering her name with strength. Aisha. Not just a victim. Not just a teacher. But a law. A shield. A reason someone else might live. True crime script, emotional outro. You know what breaks my heart the most about this story? It's walking past Aisha's empty classroom. Her desk is still there. The chair where she used to sit, grading papers late into the evening, thinking about each student and how to help them succeed. That chair sits empty now. Her students had to learn that sometimes the people who love you most can be taken away in an instant. But here's something beautiful. There's a bench outside under this big maple tree with Aisha's name on it. And every time I drive by, there are fresh flowers there. People haven't forgotten her. They won't let her memory fade away. Those two little girls? They're growing up now. They're taller, stronger, but I know they carry that day with them everywhere they go. They saw something no child should ever see. But you know what else they carry? Their mother's strength, her kindness, her dream of making the world better for kids. Here's the thing that haunts me about Aisha's story. She did everything she was supposed to do. She left an abusive marriage. She reported what happened. She trusted the courts to protect her and her daughters. She believed in the system. And the system let her down in the worst possible way. 9 months in prison for nearly killing someone. A city job waiting when he got out. Warning signs ignored over and over again. How many chances does one man get to destroy a family? But maybe, just maybe, Aisha's story can save someone else. Maybe the next time a judge sits behind that bench deciding how long an abuser stays locked up, they'll remember her name. Maybe the next time someone hears a friend talking about their partner's threats, they'll speak up instead of staying quiet. Maybe the next Aisha Fraser won't have to die for us to take domestic violence seriously. Because that's what this really comes down to, believing women when they tell us they're in danger. Not waiting until it's too late. Not giving violent men second chances to finish what they started. Aisha Fraser was a teacher, a mother, a daughter, a sister. She was someone's everything. And she deserved to be here today, watching her girls grow up, changing more young lives in her classroom. The flowers on that bench keep coming because people refuse to let her story end with her death. They're determined to make it count for something. The question is, are we going to let her story change how we protect the women still fighting to survive? Because there's another Aisha out there right now, dropping her kids off for a weekend visit, hoping she's safe. What are we going to do to make sure she comes home?
Intensive psychiatric counseling, along with a diagnosis and a treatment plan, so that he can be the loving father that his daughters need him to be. I believe that the long-term incarceration and a felony conviction are inconsistent with the goals which I desire for Lance and for my children.